She didn't talk much, but one wrong touch, and the entire bullying system collapsed in front of everyone, starting at a single lunch table. Under the scorching midday sun of early April in Mesa, Arizona, Amaya Brooks stepped out of her advanced math class with a fresh test still lingering in her mind and a half-read copy of Kindred in her hand. She was 16, quiet, sharp, and always giving the impression that she wasn't paying attention to anything around her. But in truth, she saw everything, remembered everything. She just never said it out loud. Westmont High wasn't an easy place to exist if you didn't belong to the popular crowd. Students were divided like pieces on a chessboard: athletes, theater kids, orchestra, the TikTok clique, and every movement was watched. The lunchroom wasn't just for eating. It was a battleground of silent politics, where status was defined by glances and empty seats. Amaya's usual seat by the window was taken today, so she slung her backpack over one shoulder, scanned the room, and chose a table near the center, neutral territory. No familiar faces, but also not claimed by the ruling caste. When she reached the table, a gray backpack was plopped dead center on the seat, as if to silently declare, "Mine." She paused, eyes meeting the boy sitting at the table, tall, buzz blonde hair, varsity jacket. Jackson Price, Sr., known not for his grades, but for the way people stepped aside when he walked down the hallway, like dodging a cracked tile no one ever bothered to fix. "Hi," Amaya said just loud enough. "Can I sit here? Could you move your backpack?" Jackson didn't look up at first. He tapped his chopsticks against his lunch tray. Then he raised his head and smirked. "You serious?" Amaya nodded. "I just need a seat." He leaned back in his chair like her request was a personal offense. Two of his friends at the next table snorted under their breath. "Whole cafeteria," Jackson said flatly. "And you picked a seat?" "It's not your table," Amaya replied calmly. "Just your backpack." The mood shifted. The smirk faded from Jackson's face. He stared at her for a few seconds, then slowly pulled his backpack to the side, making just enough space. "Fine. Sit," he said coldly. Amaya sat down, opened her book, and began reading like nothing had happened. And Jackson, though pretending not to care, kept glancing at her now and then, as if her silence had somehow thrown him off balance. Beneath the harsh white lights of the Westmont High cafeteria, Jackson Price's frosty remark hung in the air. But Amaya Brooks didn't flinch. She took the empty seat beside the now-shifted backpack, opened her book to the same marked page, and read on, unshaken. But Jackson wasn't quite the same. He kept staring at her, and the look in his eyes was no longer just irritation. It was something sharper, almost offended, as if he couldn't stand not getting the reaction he expected. Kevin and Trent, sitting nearby, began to snicker. "Look at that," Kevin nudged Jackson. "Quiet girls laying down the law." Jackson smirked, his voice louder than necessary, performing for an audience now. "Hey, Brooks, who do you think you are? Sitting here like you belong at this table." Amaya didn't look up. "It's just a seat. I didn't take anything from you." Her voice was calm, not cold, but even, the kind of quiet tone that gets under people's skin more than shouting ever could. Jackson let out a laugh, then abruptly shoved his lunch tray aside and turned his full body toward her. "You think you're cool or something? Just sitting there, reading like nothing we say gets to you?" The room seemed to freeze. Conversations in the cafeteria softened. A few students glanced over. One phone came out discreetly, its camera pointed right at them. Amaya closed her book. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just placed it gently on the table, then met his gaze. "I'm not trying to be cool," she said, her voice strangely steady. "I just want to eat lunch, like anyone else." Trent laughed, loud and mocking. "Jackson, looks like this girl's begging for a lesson." Jackson leaned in closer, until Amaya could smell cheap cologne mixed with soda on his jacket. "Listen," he growled. "There are places and people someone like you should stay away from, unless you're looking for trouble." Amaya didn't flinch, didn't bow her head. She simply said one sentence, soft as wind, firm as iron. "The thing is, you don't scare me." And with that, the line was drawn. In a cafeteria filled with sideways glances, stifled giggles, and phones silently hitting record, one thing became clearer than ever. Amaya Brooks wasn't the kind of girl who could be intimidated. And Jackson Price, the boy who was used to ruling through arrogance, was suddenly no longer in control. In that brief moment, the air was taut like a drawn string. Jackson stood up, tall and broad, his frame blocking out the ceiling light above. The laughter that had been echoing a few minutes before was gone. A student's phone shook slightly in their hands, but kept recording, capturing every movement, every shift in power. Amaya Brooks remained seated, eyes locked on Jackson. She wasn't tense, wasn't trembling. She just sat there as if waiting for him to trip over his own mistake. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly, her tone more a warning than a question. Jackson didn't answer. Instead, he slammed his hand on the table, smack, causing the whole row of chairs to shake. A few students at the next table jumped. A piece of bread tumbled off a younger girl's tray. No one said a word. Everyone held their breath. Then, like a king trying to enforce a crown he was never given, Jackson reached out and shoved Amaya hard on the shoulder. Only, he never made contact. In the span of a single breath, Amaya pivoted gently, her foot sliding back half a step. Her left hand caught his wrist. Her right hand moved to his elbow. No yelling, no wasted movement. Just a seamless redirection of force, like water hitting stone, like wind shifting course. And just like that, Jackson lost his balance. All 180 pounds of him toppled like a rotted fence post, thud, and hit the polished tile floor of the cafeteria with a heavy crash. The entire cafeteria erupted. Gasps of, "Oh my God," and "No way," filled the air, followed by the sound of phones clicking into slow-motion mode. A few students jumped out of their seats. The lunch monitor, who'd just returned to the room, looked around in confusion, completely lost. Amaya took half a step back. Her hand stayed open, her stance solid, not to attack, but to protect. She hadn't struck him. She had simply let him defeat himself. Jackson sat up, his face bright red. Not from pain, but from shame. Shame at being humiliated in front of everyone. Shame at losing control. Shame that Amaya's silence had cut deeper than any insult. "You think that makes you cool?" Jackson hissed. Amaya looked at him, not mocking, not gloating, just calm, composed, and resolute. "No," she said. "I just think you should learn when to step back before you fall again." The impact of that lunch period didn't stay confined to the polished tile floor of Westmont High's cafeteria. Within 2 hours, a video clip of Amaya Brooks dropping Jackson Price with a graceful pivot and takedown had exploded on TikTok. No filters, no music, just the raw audio and a perfectly timed fall. The caption was simple: "Don't mess with the quiet girl." By midnight, the clip had over 200,000 views. By morning, 500,000, then 1 million. She was being called the hallway ninja. Someone had even made a meme from the moment Jackson lost his balance. His stunned face froze in mid-fall with captions like, "When you think you're the boss but forgot to read the terms and conditions." Online, Amaya became an icon, a quiet, resilient black girl who dared to say enough not with words, but with perfectly timed action. Hashtags like hashtag Amaya Brooks and hashtag lunchroom legend flooded social media. But the reality in halls of Westmont High was more complicated. That Friday morning, as Amaya walked through the school gates, every eye turned toward her, not with ridicule or scorn, but with something else: curiosity, respect. A few students nodded at her like they were seeing a living legend. Others avoided her gaze, wary of becoming the next victim. In science class, Cody, her best friend since 7th grade, sat beside her, eyes locked on his phone. "Did you know the clip hit 1.2 million views?" he whispered. Some dude claiming to be an MMA coach commented, saying your reflexes are like pro level. Amaya sighed. "I didn't do it to be famous." Cody raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, well, most icons don't choose the moment they become symbols." Not everyone applauded, though. During break, 2 of Jackson's closest friends walked by just slow enough to make sure Amaya heard them. "So now one clumsy fall makes you a hero," one said. "TikTok really out here, making people delusional," the other added. Amaya heard every word. But instead of reacting, she stood a little taller, walked a little firmer. She understood one thing. Social media could lift you up, but it could just as easily bury you. And Amaya, she had never asked for the spotlight. She only stood when pushed, only reacted when there was no other path. But now, the light was following her step by step, whether she wanted it or not. After school, Amaya Brooks was called to the main office. The glass door was frosted, the overhead fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow. At the center of the room sat Assistant Principal Richard, salt and pepper hair, neat desk, a man known more for keeping things smooth than dealing with mess. Across from him sat Amaya and Jackson Price, his face still red with embarrassment. He avoided eye contact, twisting his backpack strap, as if it might speak for him. "Thank you both for coming," Mr. Richard began, his voice trying to stay composed, though it clearly wavered under the weight of what had happened. "I think it's best we clear this up now, before the internet tells its own version of the story." Jackson was the first to speak. "I got shoved in the cafeteria, in front of everyone, for no reason." Amaya tilted her head, one brow raised. "Is that so? Did you lay hands on him?" Richard asked, spinning a pen lightly between his fingers. "He shoved me first." "Twice." Amaya replied, calm, not aggressive, but firm. "I made it clear, don't touch me again." He didn't listen. Richard looked at both of them, then clicked open the now viral video from lunch. They watched from a side angle, Jackson shoving, light but unmistakable, followed by Amaya's shoulder turn, and that now famous sidestep encounter. When Jackson hit the floor, Richard paused the video. He removed his glasses, exhaling slowly. "I've watched this more than 10 times. There's no punch, no kick, no excessive reaction. Amaya, I have to say you were very composed." Jackson cut in, voice tight. "So I don't get a say?" "No," Richard said, leaning slightly toward him. "You don't get to put your hands on someone first, not even with one finger." Silence hung for a few seconds. "Amaya, are you hurt?" he asked next. "No, sir. Do you feel your response cross a line?" She shook her head. "I defended myself." Richard scribbled a few notes on a legal pad. "I'll be contacting both your parents. But I don't see any reason to discipline you, Amaya. We teach students not to use their hands to resolve conflict, and that message has to go both ways." Jackson hissed lightly between his teeth, but said nothing more. He knew the video had already spoken louder than any excuse he could offer. And Amaya? She sat tall, eyes calm. Not smug, not apologetic. Just someone who knew exactly where she stood, and that she wouldn't be knocked down again. At Westmont High, power wasn't printed in the student handbook. It walked in the hallways. Before that day, Jackson Price walked him like the halls were his personal stage. His stare was avoided. His laughter trailed behind students too scared to fight back. But that invisible crown had fallen, right there, beside his body on the cafeteria floor, under the lens of hundreds of phones. Monday, Jackson returned to school. No smirks. No entourage flanking him like bodyguards. He walked fast, eyes forward, avoiding eye contact. Everyone noticed, but the stares weren't out of fear anymore. They were laced with curiosity and something colder, contempt. Some students chuckled under their breath. Others simply shook their heads. Amaya saw it all, but she didn't smile. She just kept moving, steady steps, eyes focused, pace neither rushed nor slow. But she could feel the shift, the whispers behind her back, the glances that no longer held only curiosity, but a touch of caution. Some students, especially those who had once benefited from Jackson's rule, now avoided her, not because they feared her, but because she represented something they couldn't predict. "You shook the whole board," Cody murmured during break, sitting beside her while peeling open a yogurt. "Jackson's crew is looking at you like you unplugged the throne." Amaya shrugged. "I didn't start it." "No," Cody nodded, "but you ended it. And those guys? They won't forget that." Rumors started flying. Some said Amaya was some kind of underground martial arts master. Others called her a walking red flag. A group of boys, former disciples of Jackson, began blocking her path in the hallway. They didn't say anything, just stood there, smirking, daring her to react. But Amaya didn't flinch. She simply stepped aside, kept her distance, eyes locked on them. She hadn't fought to become visible. But now, there was no going back to being the quiet girl in row 2. And to some people, that was a bigger threat than Jackson's fall ever was. Friday afternoon, the back courtyard of Westmont High was still and quiet as always. The light of late day spilled across the pavement in long golden streaks. Amaya stood waiting for the bus when she noticed a familiar figure near the chain-link fence, head low like he was wrestling with his own thoughts. Jackson Price. She pulled out her earbuds, keeping her expression neutral, but her mind alert. "I'm not here to start anything," Jackson said quickly, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, eyes not quite meeting hers. "I don't really know how to talk about this, but I know I need to." Amaya stayed silent, waiting. Jackson drew a deep breath. "I was wrong, really wrong. Back then, I thought if I let you sit there, I'd look weak. Stupid, right? But it felt real. I'm used to people avoiding me, not challenging me. And you," he paused, "you weren't afraid. And I didn't know how to handle that. So I defaulted to the only thing I knew." She said nothing, watching him. Eyes calm, not cold, but not softened either. Then the video, the way people reacted, he gave a short, bitter laugh. "I thought I was strong. But that fall, it woke me up." Amaya tilted her head. "You don't have to apologize just because you were embarrassed." "No," Jackson replied quickly. "I'm apologizing because I put my hands on you. Because I thought I had the right to. I deserved to get knocked down. And you didn't fight back. You just made me realize I was nothing but loud noise in a big shell." This time, Amaya exhaled softly. "I didn't want to embarrass you. I just wanted you to stop." Jackson nodded, his voice smaller now. "I get that. And thank you for not making it worse." There was a pause. In the distance, the bus rounded the corner. "You can hate me," Jackson said, stepping back. "I wouldn't blame you. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to change. For real." Amaya nodded slightly. "I believe people can change. If they want to." A faint smile flickered across Jackson's face. Then, "Thanks for not kicking me when I was already down." She shrugged, her gaze softening. "I didn't have to. You felt all on your own." And with that, she turned and stepped onto the bus. No triumph, no defeat, just the end of a chapter, one they both needed. Under the kitchen lights, Amaya stood beside her mother, folding towels from a fresh laundry basket. The scent of detergent still clung to the fabric, and the hum of the dryer in the next room filled the silence like a steady breath. "You okay?" Her mother, Emily, asked, her voice warm and steady after another overnight shift at the hospital. Amaya nodded, not looking up. "I'm fine. What happened at school?" Emily hesitated, not wanting to reopen a wound witnessed by hundreds of students and millions more online. "I didn't get in a fight," Amaya said, as if reading her mother's mind. "I just held my ground." Emily smiled. "I know. I saw the video. You handled it well. Most people wouldn't have stayed that calm." Amaya was quiet for a moment before replying. "I wasn't thinking too much in that moment. I just remembered practice. What Coach Harris always says. Don't react from instinct. React from skill." Every afternoon after school, she'd go to the small training room tucked behind an old strip mall. No giant mirrors, no background music, just mats, heavy breathing, and patience. Coach Harris, a former officer, never yelled, never praised too highly. He just taught right, every move, every stance, every response. "I didn't learn to fight." Amaya repeated one of his mantras. "I learned so no one else would control how I respond." Emily paused in her folding, then nodded. "I'm proud you know the value in that. Not everyone does." Out there, the internet still hadn't settled down. The video of Amaya kept spreading, no longer just shared but now analyzed, dissected, commented on. How this girl used Krav Maga to flip the situation without throwing a single punch. Some called her a hero. Others said she was performing. But Amaya didn't care about the applause or the criticism. She knew the important thing wasn't to impress anyone. It was to stay grounded, even when everything around her was shaking. Are you going to keep training? Emily asked. I am. Amaya replied. Not because I'm afraid it'll happen again, but because I want to always know I can stand firm. Emily smiled softly. Standing firm is enough, baby girl. In the late afternoon sun behind the school's basketball court, Amaya Brooks sat alone on a wooden bench, her backpack beside her and a cold water bottle in hand. Westmont High buzzed with its usual noise, but this corner remained quiet. Maybe the only place where she could breathe without being stared at. It had only been a few days since the video of the quiet girl flipping the school bully went viral. Hundreds of thousands of views. Comments. Shares. Opinions. Half praise, half dismissal. She said nothing, posted nothing, gave no reactions. And yet, her silence only made people talk more, as if they couldn't stand that someone could be powerful without raising their voice to prove it. Then, footsteps cutting through her thoughts. Amaya. She turned. It was Ms. Monica, her literature teacher, one of the few adults at school who didn't treat students like children. I saw the video, Monica said, sitting down beside Amaya without asking. And your quote in the school paper, too. Amaya nodded, saying nothing. You know, Monica continued, when I was in high school, I was like Jackson. To be honest, I bullied a girl once. She was too smart, too quiet, and I hated the way she made me feel like I wasn't enough. Amaya turned to her, surprised. One day, Ms. Monica smiled faintly. She stood up. No punches, no yelling. Just said something I've never forgotten. I don't need to be loud to be heard. She sighed. And you remind me of her, not because of that flawless move, but because you know who you are, and you won't let others define you on their terms. Amaya looked toward the court. Sometimes I wish I could just be the quiet girl, not some viral symbol everyone keeps talking about. Then don't be their symbol, Monica said. Be a voice for the ones who haven't stood up yet, for the ones who get misunderstood because they don't shout. A soft breeze swept through, lifting a few loose strands of hair from Amaya's forehead. She nodded, her gaze drifting to the rusted goalpost in the distance. Just then, a small group of underclassmen walked by. One girl paused, looking at Amaya with wide, glimmering eyes. Thank you, she whispered, then quickly walked away. Amaya didn't answer, but a small, quiet smile tugged at her lips. And in that moment, she understood this was real strength. Not yelling, not striking, just standing firm in the storm when it counts. That Friday afternoon, a soft rain fell over Arizona. Thin, silken droplets tapped gently against the awning of the modest apartment where Amaya Brooks lived with her mother and older brother. In the kitchen, the warm scent of rice and slow-cooked black beans drifted through the air. Amaya sat at the dining table, a history textbook open before her, but her eyes were fixed on the rain-streaked window. The past week had been a whirlwind. Social media, stairs in the hallway, murmured voices behind her back. Some called her brave. Others said she was just lucky. But all she wanted was for things to go back to how they were before. You okay? Her mom, Emily, asked as she poured more tea into Amaya's cup. Amaya nodded. I'm okay, Mom. Okay, her mom repeated, as if testing the word for hidden sadness. Then she gently placed her hand over Amaya's. You don't have to become someone else just so people can feel at ease. As long as you don't lose yourself, that's enough. Amaya squeezed her mother's hand, then nodded again. She remembered what Ms. Monica had said. She thought of the younger girl at the basketball court. People liked them. They didn't need loud protectors. They just needed someone willing to stand up and remind the world that silence didn't mean weakness. That night, Amaya opened her phone. Messages, tags, more videos. One short clip, just 7 seconds, was spreading fast. It was the moment, she said, you don't get to touch me again. Under the cafeteria's dim lighting, her face appeared steady and sharp, calm, unwavering. She didn't repost the video. She didn't caption it. She didn't reply to the comments. Instead, she opened her notes app and typed a single line. I don't need a shout to be respected. I just need to stand firm and let my actions speak for me. She saved it, then turned off the screen. No need for likes. No need for applause. Because Amaya knew, sometimes power doesn't come from punches or popularity. It comes from knowing who you are and not letting anyone shake that. Her story didn't end in a viral clip. It continued. Every time she walked into class, stepped down the halls of Westmont High, or simply lifted her head and moved forward, steadfast, without needing anyone's permission,